2, 3.
My name is Shaunda Penny, and I am from Saratoga Springs, New York. And I am a mother of 13 children.
Amazing. That is wonderful. What is the craziest comment you've ever received? You must have received some really crazy comments.
Oh my gosh, I've received so many comments, and I started getting them. So I had a boy and a girl first, and they were 11 months apart. So clearly the expectation was that we're done. So I started getting crazy comments when I only had 3 kids. So I've had a long time to collect crazy comments. But I think my favorite is actually the one time that I had a witty retort ready. Because frequently the comments hit you at a time that you really just are not in the mood.
You're not in the mood.
You're not in the mood to hear the comment when you've got 6 children in the Walmart and one of them is crying and somebody says you've got your hands full. You don't have the bandwidth to retort well. But one time I had someone say to me, all those kids, don't you have a TV? And for whatever reason, I had it in me and I looked back at him and I said, well, yes, we do, but we like it better than TV, don't you? And his face just,
right?
He didn't know what to do with that.
I'm always confused by that exact comment about the TV for exactly the reason you retorted. Like, what is the thought that people should just like veg out and watch TV and they're not into each other? And that's great. Like, no, it's
not be
good
the
for
goal.
you. No, it should not be the goal. And it's bizarre that it is the goal, or it is the standard retort. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything else? Any other good memory hole comments?
Oh, I've had a lot
positive.
A lot of positive for sure. Yeah. We definitely get a lot of, your kids are so beautiful. They're so well behaved. And that's really hard when it comes after the kids have been not as well behaved as I would like them to be. And then someone comes up and says, they were so well behaved. Like, oh, actually, no, she's not getting a donut after mass today because I had to talk to her 10 times. But thank you for thinking she was good.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of really nice comments, but a lot of your hands are full. Aren't you done? I get a lot of, how do you do it? And that is one that I find particularly challenging. And I actually I thought of this in thinking about talking to you today, that this is a time where I feel like I can actually address that question. But when somebody says it to you in passing, they're not looking to have a conversation about how you actually do it, right? They're just exclaiming, how do you do it?
Yeah.
So my standard response is, when someone says, how do you do it, is Jesus, wine, and coffee, and sometimes number 2 and 3 switch, order of importance. And we laugh, and then they go on. And I came up with that because I get the comment so frequently. And I wanted to say something because I was just looking at people like, I don't know, I just do it. Like, what's the other option? To not? Because they're here. But I really would love to, when somebody says that to me, be able to sit down and say, oh, like, do you actually want to know how I do it? Because I'd love to talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I do. And so we'll kind of work through that, I think. But for people just joining, you have 13 children. Can you tell me the kind of age range and maybe the sexes?
Sure. So I have, my oldest is 23. My youngest is 3. And I have 10 girls and 3 boys. And amazing. The 3 boys are really spread out. So my boys are currently 22, 17, and 7. So we're a very girl heavy household, because even the boys, I mean, the boys are boys for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But they are clearly young men who were formed by women. And it's funny, my husband actually only has 1 brother. So living in this sea of estrogen, is formative for him as well.
That's amazing. Well, tell me how long you've been married and when did you have your first?
So my husband and I met in college and started dating. We were 19. We got married a month after he graduated. I graduated a year before him, and worked. And then when he graduated, we got married a month later. So we were both 21 when we got married. We were, by today's standards, very young. We were the first of our friends to get married. Our wedding was a huge party because everybody else was there, and it was great. And that will be 25 years this July. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay. That's great. We are just coming up on 27. We're just a little bit ahead of you, but yeah, what a blessing, a quarter century. Can you share where you were in college? And was this a normal thing to do where you were in college?
No, it was not at all.
Okay.
No. So we were in college in Boston. I was actually at BU when we met, but then I ended up, for financial reasons, transferring to UMass Boston, which is where I graduated from. But I still lived in the city of Boston in an apartment. And my husband was at MIT. And so we were not at the schools we're sending our kids to.
Yeah, I was going to say, these aren't schools known for producing young marriages or marriage-minded people, or certainly not child-minded people. I spent a lot of time in and around Boston, as you know, and so I know those communities pretty well. Amazing. So how did you meet?
We met at a fraternity sorority mixer. Actually, it's very cliche.
That's great.
I was a history major at UMass Boston who was dating a guy at MIT. And so the academic differences are a little bit. And I needed to pass a math CLEP test in order to get out of taking math. I didn't want to take math, but there was a requirement that you had to have a math class. And so I asked my boyfriend at the time if he would help me with math. And that was very frustrating because I was not a math person. But my husband, Chris, was known for being pretty patient. And so he asked Chris if he would take over tutoring me.
Oh, that's too funny.
And he did. And I passed my math CLEP test. I didn't need to take the math class. I got the credit without taking the class as hoped for. And I got Chris. So, I win all around.
And so you were a history major. What was Chris majoring in at a
chemical engineering?
School,
chemical engineering. Yeah. With a minor in chemistry. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. All right. So when abouts was this in college? What year?
I graduated in 2000 and he graduated in 2001. So.
Okay. But you were just at the start of college, middle, and when did you guys meet?
So we started dating sophomore year. I graduated a year early. So whether it was my whatever. Yeah. We started dating our second year in college.
Okay. Now people want to know this, right? Because this is like the whole. Can you date and get married in college? You said you were both 21. Had you both finished, or were you still in school?
Yeah, so I graduated early when I was 20. Okay. He graduated a month before we got married. 6 weeks. He graduated in May and we got married the first weekend of July. So we did wait until we were both out of school. But
you were quick.
Yeah, but we were quick. We were dating for 9 months-ish before we got engaged. And then we were engaged for just under a year and a half. And that felt really long to be engaged. It really did. But I was living in New Jersey. After I graduated, I did Teach for America. Okay. And so I was living in New Jersey and he was in Boston. So it wasn't, even if if I had still been in Boston, I think we might have gotten married sooner. But because we were living so far apart, it didn't make sense to get married until after he could move to where we could be together.
Yeah. And when you met each other, and in those early years, did you know you wanted to have a large family, or that you'd be open to kids, or was that? Tell me what that was like.
So, we both knew we wanted to have kids, and we both knew by the time that we knew we were getting married, which, I mean, he says he knew we were getting married before we were dating.
That's cute.
By the time I was clued in, we were sure we wanted to have kids and we wanted to have kids pretty soon. We didn't want to wait too long. And it's so funny to look back on what we said at the time. At the time, we said that we would have kids until we were 30. And we figured we would probably fit like 5 in before we were 30. And then we were done. That was enough.
Amazing. Just to get my head around this, because it's so interesting, mainly because it's so different. So most people think like if they have sort of a limited number in their mind, which most people do, like a reasonable number, 2 or 3, they think they're going to do stuff and then have their 2 or 3. But you had this idea that you're going to have your 5 maybe in your 20s and then do stuff afterwards. So that's really intriguing to me. And I think it could be really interesting. Where did that come from?
I honestly don't know, other than we were young and we were broke. And we knew that it was okay to be young and broke with little kids. And so we were just going to do the young broke thing for a while. And then when our youngest went to school, it's so funny because this is just so the opposite of what my existence is. But this was our vision. When my youngest went to school, I would go back to work. I would go back to graduate school, and we would have the kids. And it would be great because we would, they would be at school during the day, and it would give me a lot of time to do my stuff. And then we would do our family stuff in the evening. And then we used to say, like, our 40s and 50s are going to rock. And then we'll have money because we'll both be working. And we'll have, he will have made his way up the ladder. And so we'll be able to do all these great things because our kids will be older. And so they'll be able to do stuff, and we'll have the resources to do it with them. So I think that was our rationale.
I think it makes a lot of sense in that like young and broke mindset. Although I think a lot of people think you shouldn't be young and broke with kids. So that right there, I think is like a fascinating thing that you brought into your marriage. I'm beginning to interview men for our next project, and there's a part of me that wants to title it, like Young and Broke. If it works out, something like that. Because the number of guys that have already shared with me something to that effect is astonishing. So, all right, so we'll set that. So this was your vision. Your vision was you get married, you're young, you've got a lot of energy, but you're broke. You're gonna have like 5 kids before you're 30, and then you're gonna like work, make money, and your 40s and 50s are gonna be sitting on the beach drinking margaritas or something.
Yep.
All right. So what happened? That's not quite what happened.
No, that's not what happened at all.
All right. Tell me.
So it's funny because our story is not one that has like a enormous change. God has been very gentle with us. It's been baby steps the whole way. We were having our babies and I was home, and that was the plan. I was working. I always worked until we had, it was between babies 7 and 8 that I stopped working. Then I still was teaching. I worked part-time until we had 8 or 9 kids. I worked part-time outside the home. And I always felt very strongly that was part of my identity. Like I did not want to give that up. It was very hard for me to give that up. But I was working part-time.
And you were a teacher?
I was home. So I worked a lot of different jobs part-time.
Okay. Okay. So I can ask you that later. I just wanted to have a mental image. Okay. So you're working part-time.
So I was working part-time outside the home, but I was home with the kids. We moved from closer to New York City to upstate here in Saratoga. And my husband was working in Albany. We had our 5th child and we were 28. And things were kind of still on the trajectory that we expected, except that we had become pretty Catholic, which we were not. So I'm a cradle Christmas and Easter Catholic. My husband, talking about odd things happening in cultures at universities, my husband actually converted to Catholicism at MIT. So when we're talking about where our kids go to college, he's always very quick to tell people, don't discount a school just because you think it's too secular or something, because I converted to MIT.
Yeah.
But we converted to kind of, I don't know, dipping our toe in the water of Catholicism.
Yeah.
But then in catechizing our daughter, our oldest, and preparing her to receive First Communion, we really started reflecting on, like if we're going to do this, if we actually believe this, we should understand it. And so we started really learning about the faith. And at that time, God put in our path another couple at our church. They had 2 boys and then a big gap. And then they had another boy that was the same age as our 5th, our son. And we started talking to them, and they told us about the theology of the body. Christopher West had a easier version than JP2's denser actual theology of the body. And so we started reading it, and we started having conversations about whether or not, we used to joke that Chris was going to get his bar snipsta. Like, we were done at 30 and we were done.
Yeah.
And we started actually talking about whether or not that was right. And we had never really had that conversation. And so we learned more about it, and we decided that we didn't think it was right. And so we took an NFP class, and we ended up getting pregnant with our 6th. We were very excited. I was 30. And so now we were at the point that we were saying, oh, are we actually done? And it led to us having conversations about what we felt called to do. We had been together for 11 years at this point, and I don't know that we had ever had the conversation about what we were called to do. Until that point, it was all, what do I want to do? What do you want to do? And with baby number 6 and being introduced to the theology of the body, it was an impetus for us to have those conversations for the first time. And we decided we really felt called to keep doing what we were doing. It was hard. And it's interesting because I think in as far as periods of time in our marriage, that 5th to 6th baby was one of the hardest that we've had. It was a very difficult adjustment. Neither one of us were doing particularly well health-wise. I had terrible postpartum depression after my 6th baby. And I started miscarrying. I've had a bunch of miscarriages, and they started after that 6th baby. And it was a really hard point in our life, but it was when we started understanding that for whatever reason, this is what we were supposed to be doing. And we decided that we were no longer going to contracept at all, which people are always shocked when they find out. Like, we contracepted kids 16 months apart. Like, we did that because we chose to do it. And we stopped using contraception after our 5th baby. And we just decided that we were going to be open to the babies that God gave us unless we had a real reason to not be. And there have been a few periods of time in our marriage that we've used NFP to postpone pregnancy because we felt like we had to. But for the most part, we've just been default in, gone along with for the ride. I mean, that's really it. Like, the rest of the story is we've been along for the ride, and all of our decisions since have been based on that.
Amazing. That's a really remarkable story and very atypical. It's like a very unusual story. Although this is what I love about people. There's like no summary of people. What a great story. I'm sorry about the postpartum depression. I need to say that I've had some really, really terrible postpartum experiences too. And I'm grateful for your talking about it because it's a terrible suffering.
It is.
Yeah. I'm going to actually, just to close up the story of your family. So I guess you use language of default, like you were just in by default after you had this kind of conversion or reversion or experience with being persuaded that you should be open to life. And so this was right around the beginning of your 30s, your early 30s?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, like, if I'm not miscounting, that was right around baby 6. And then you doubled your family size between 30 and 40. I mean, how old were you when you had your last baby?
So my youngest is 3. So I was 42. I was 42 when I had her. And I mean, I'm 46 now. So I just turned 46 last week. So but I've heard of people having babies when they're 48. So maybe, but
didn't happen for me, although my kids are still praying for it.
Yeah, mine too. Yesterday I grabbed a snack and my 16-year-old looked at me and said, "Are you pregnant?" Like, no, I'm just hungry, honey. I'm just hungry.
Yeah. No, my 13-year-old, she patted my tummy and she said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "It's just fat, honey. It's not. There's no baby there." They would love nothing more. And that by itself is a beautiful and interesting theme that I think children are very naturally pronatal. They just naturally think babies are great. They don't seem to have any sense of the next child will take something from me. They certainly have some kind of working story in their minds. It's great. Okay, so you had 6 and then you had your 13th when you were 42, and that's where you are today. Really an amazing story. I did want to ask you about that time between, I think you said 7 and 8, when you walked away from your work, and that was so difficult. And so I wondered if you wanted to elaborate, tell us more about that.
Yeah, I always pictured myself working to better the world. Like that's what I was going to do. And so I went through phases of wanting to go to law school and be a child advocate was going to be my dream. I was going to be a teacher, but I wasn't just going to be a teacher. I was going to be like the teacher that just perfected the system. I was very ambitious and very motivated. And I really had only ever thought of some sort of employment as being my way to better the world. And it wasn't until I had my 3rd miscarriage and my 2nd hemorrhage after a miscarriage, and I was still working. And I went back to work 5 days after I hemorrhaged because there's no maternity leave for miscarriages.
Yeah.
And I was so low. And I just looked at my husband and I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not doing a good job raising our kids because I was working at the time, I was managing a hotel. So I was working nights. So he did 2nd shift with the kids. I did 1st shift with the kids. And we passed as ships in the night. And I just said, I can't keep doing this. I'm not doing good for anybody anymore. And I said, can we make it because I wasn't making a ton working in a hotel, but I was making enough. And money is never free and easy when you have a bunch of kids. And so he said, and this is literally his mantra as far as money is concerned. He's like, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. And we have. The money thing, it was difficult, but we figured it out. The me being at home thing, it took a long time and a lot of little pieces and little growth here and there for me to realize that Mother Teresa quote, if you wanted to go change the world, go home and love your family. And I think it was really because at that point I started having kids that were older and I could start to see the fruits of my labor a little bit more. And I started to see that I really could make the world a much better place, and not just my home, but the world a much better place by raising humans that would make the world a better place and would go out and do beautiful things in their homes and outside their homes. And that for whatever reason, God was calling me to better the world in that way and not in the way that I had thought. Like it was clear my call was still the same that I thought it was when I was growing up. I was called to make the world a better place, a more beautiful place, a softer place for people to fall. But I was called to do that through my children and through my home and not through some form of employment.
That's really beautiful. I love the idea that there are multiple paths to live out the same central call. And so it's not a new call, but a different way to live out the same call. I think that's really beautiful. So then when you had that realization, you gave up the second income. And your husband said, we'll make it work. How did you make it work? I mean, did it work out okay?
I mean, we're fine now. I have a very good friend who was a great inspiration to me along the way. She has 11. And at about that point, she looked at me and she said, God will give you what you need. He won't give you more. So don't look for more, but he'll give you what you need. And that's really been it. My husband was able to get raises at work that made up for some of it. We cut back on spending a lot to make up for some of it. And there have been just little miracles along the way. This is just one example of many, but there was one day we were leaving Mass. I think we had 8 kids at the time. And I had a couple come up to me and she said, your family is so beautiful. You're doing a great job. I want you to have this. And she handed me an envelope. And I said, thank you so much. How lovely. chatted with her for a minute, but didn't open the envelope. And then we got home and my husband said, "What did she give you?" And I opened the envelope and it was $1,300. And my mind was blown. Like, people had given us, we had one man we went to mass with that would regularly give us $40 and tell us to take the kids out for ice cream because he had 10 kids and he knew how hard it was and he wanted to have the kids to have a treat. But no one had ever done anything like this before. And I started dreaming. I'm like, oh, we're going to do so many things. Like, $1,300 is a lot of money. We're going to do so many things. Yeah. And I like right away, I'm a planner. I started planning what we were going to do with this money. And the next morning, our hot water heater blew up. And the repair was exactly $1,300.
I want to cry.
Right? Like, I feel my eyes tearing up thinking about it. Because had she not given us that money, where we were at, that would have wrecked us. We didn't have $1,300 in savings. I don't even know if we had $1,300 available on a credit card at that point. Like, we did not have $1,300. But when the water heater blew up the next morning, my husband called our friend that does HVAC and said, "How much is a new hot water heater?" And he said, "It's $1,300. And my husband and I just both started crying. And you're like, God is so good. He took care of us. And so it's us deciding to do what we were feeling called to do, even knowing that it was going to be hard and not knowing how it was going to work. It worked. The trust worked.
Yeah. Trust is funny, right? I was reflecting on this with some friends a few days ago, and it's like, if there isn't really something bad in front of you, the trust isn't worth anything. You know, when we speak about like a venture of faith or stepping out in faith, people say, if there isn't like a chasm in front of you or something truly scary, what is the faith worth, or what is the trust worth? I'm getting emotional just listening to the story at the same time. It's really beautiful. Kind of just wrapping up this series of thoughts about your assessment of your vocation to make the world better, to make it softer for people. Tell us more about that. I mean, the word identity is overused, but I think that this is a piece that often seems to be at the forefront of the minds of a lot of young women who are thinking about their families. This kind of sense of like, who am I? One of the moms I talked to said, well, you know, like, I really identified with what I was doing. I was really good at it. She was a corporate lawyer. And she said it was like the lawyer self, and then there was this mom self. And over time, these two selves kind of collided in certain ways. What was that like for you? How do you think about that?
I think that when I look back on the things that I did and the things that I wanted to do, I was in Teacher America. For people who aren't familiar with the program, where you teach in an under-resourced school district for 2 years. And so my mission was very clear, not just to teach the kids, but I was working towards justice. And I see that now in the way I'm raising my children. I'm teaching them, but I'm also teaching them to be just people. And I'm teaching them to exist in a world and work for a world in which there is justice. And so that call isn't gone. It's just transformed. I worked in hospitality for a long time. Like I said, I was managing a hotel. I loved it. I loved working in hospitality. Like, I was darn good at it. I was really good at my job and I missed it. But then I realized, oh, I'm still called to hospitality, right? I can be the person that brings the meal to the mom that just had the baby. I can be the one who, when someone is having a hard day, says, come over, it's fine, and just whip something up, or doesn't, and sits and listens. I can be the one, because I'm home, I can be the one. We have elderly people in our church that don't have family locally. I can be the one that helps make sure they get to a doctor's appointment. And I think the change was that I had to switch my thinking to a phrase in education, multum non multa, deep but not many. I had always had this idea that I needed to help hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Like, I had to do the thing that was going to have the biggest impact. The real change in my understanding of my vocation was that I wasn't being called to have an impact on millions of people. I was being called to have a really deep impact in my community and in my family. And so if I viewed it that way, I started to feel just as challenged and just as fulfilled as I had when I was doing bigger things. because I could really pour myself into it. I'm not just a homeschool mom. I'm educating my children and I'm making a home, and that's a really beautiful thing. And if I do it well, the ripples of that will go so far. But if I don't do it well because I'm doing big things, the impact of that can also be great.
Yeah. I think Chesterton said something about that, but I don't have it at the tip of my fingers.
It's something like, why is it a great thing to be something to many people, but a small thing to be everything to one person?
I think it does challenge our pride, right? It does challenge our pride. I have a version of that, this sort of like, I'm going to grow up to be a big economist and change the world. And they were all good things I wanted to do. Maybe in God's way, I'll end up playing that kind of a role, but definitely not the way I thought.
It was actually a very recent story. That pride is still, I don't know, maybe it's been a year since I've had a massive meltdown about it. But there was one time that my husband got a big bonus at work. And it was after a particularly challenging couple of months for me as a mom. And he came home and he got a plaque for his wall and he got a fat check. And he was so excited. And my reaction was that I got really angry. I got really mad. And I was like, congratulations, I'm so glad for you. And he's like, what is wrong? Like, what on earth? Right? My poor husband.
Yeah.
He's like,
I know.
what on earth is wrong with you? I was like, never going to get a bonus. Not ever going to get a pat on the back for what I'm doing. And so my kids actually made me a mom was right plaque for my kitchen. So that whenever they come back, because I have kids that are adults now, so they're starting to realize that maybe I knew what I was talking about. So my 17-year-old son wood burns onto this like piece of 2x4. Mom was right about something, so that now I have a plaque.
Amazing. You have a plaque. I was going to say, I'll send you a plaque. We'll send you a podcast plaque. In fact, we'll have to do that.
Yeah. It's a silly thing to get right. Looking back on it, I'm like, wow, I was being really ridiculous. But in the moment, you miss those things. When you're the kid that worked for the gold star on the chart, right? I think so much of this goes back to the way we're raising and educating our children, right? But when you're the kid that always wanted the star in the chart, and then you choose a vocation that doesn't give stars on a chart, it's a good adjustment for us, but it's challenging.
Oh, well said. It is really challenging. Like I remember one of the moms I interviewed for the book. I mean, she went from being like really successful at work to having twins, and she was terrible at it. Probably everybody would be terrible at having twins. And she said that just the night and day, the sense of like, I was competent, like I was a competent, successful human being. And now I'm just trying to figure out how to diaper two babies at once. And somebody is constantly crying. And that is a real blow. Like initially it's a blow, but as you said, I mean, for me, I would say the surprise of the delight of my grown children. Like I believed it was valuable when they were little, but the delight of here's an adult who I raised, who is so interesting, who has so many things that we share in common. And then so many things are so different from me. Like you are this new creation. And then somehow like I'm mixed up with some kind of combination of pride and just fascination. Like I just want to keep watching you. So this story about your husband and the plaque is really interesting. I think that's terrific that he's so successful at work. But I do want to ask you about your marriage. There's a common idea out there that, having kids or too many kids puts a damper on marital intimacy, marital quality, date life, romance, and all the rest. And I think there's a lot of ways to see how that's kind of ridiculous when you get it out of your mouth. At the same time, it's there. So can you share anything about your marriage? Like, what is it like being married with 13 children?
So we're still crazy, stupid in love. Like we're really,
that's so great.
He's still my favorite. And we still are, I mean, we're more in love than we were when we were 19 for sure, because there's just so many more facets to love at this point. With each child and with each year of life, you get new things that become a part of you. And so there's more to love. When the kids were all little, like before we had a built-in babysitter, it would be very difficult to make sure that we were still spending time just us. And I have to think my husband is the one who has always insisted on us taking time just us. And so when the kids were all little, our parents didn't live as close. Everyone lives within a 20-minute drive now, but that wasn't always the case. And so when our parents would come to visit for the weekend, we would always go out for a date. We put the kids to bed early, and we would always spend time intentionally together in the evenings. And I would want to keep going and keep doing this. And you don't understand how much I have to do the laundry, and I have to do the homeschooling. I have to do this, and this. You said, but you also need to just sit down and cuddle for a while. We have to do that. The grain of truth in there is that you have to be intentional about making the time, because the time won't just appear. But I don't know that's unique to having a large family, though, because you could have one kid or two kids and just look at your phone all night like this, and you have plenty of time together, but you're not actually connecting. I think having so many kids provides a unique opportunity, or an opportunity that's unique to that call, that there are so many things that we actually have to talk about in a day, right? Our life is our children. He has his work and I have some things that are just mine, but for the most part, our life is our children. And the decisions regarding our children and how to raise our children and what to do with our children are decisions that we make together. And so it gives us a lot more that we have to talk about. And so thus we talk more, because we have more that we have to talk about. And that doesn't stop as the kids get older. I think we talk about our adult children and our teenagers more than we talk about our little kids. I think it has given us an opportunity to grow, and grow both individually and together, that has really deepened our love and our relationship. But we do have to be intentional about it, because if you're not, the busyness will just overtake it. I just don't think that that's unique to having 13 kids or more than 5 kids. I think that's just living in the world.
Yeah, interesting. This might be a good time to ask you about homeschooling. Not everybody with a lot of kids homeschools. You've mentioned it a couple of times. I mean, you're professionally an educator. When did you start homeschooling, and how much is that part of this journey?
We started with our kids in school. We actually, interestingly, moved to Saratoga Springs because it has a good school district. So we were living in the city of Poughkeepsie, which is about an hour and a half north of New York City. And the schools in the city of Poughkeepsie were not great. And our daughter was reaching kindergarten. And so we started looking for other options. And my husband got transferred to Albany, and we moved to Saratoga because it had great schools. Our oldest did kindergarten, and then she went on to first grade. My son, was in kindergarten, and we just started noticing that it was very difficult to maintain the focus of our family on the home with them in school, because we imagined that they would go to school and then they would come home and we would do all of our normal stuff outside of school hours. But it was really hard to do that, because there were school activity. I mean, this is first grade and kindergarten. Like, this isn't high school.
I know.
Right? There were so many activities and so many things to do. And my daughter, instead of wanting to, so I had 5 kids at this time. Instead of wanting to play with her brothers and sisters like she always had, she was asking to go to friends' houses all the time. I want to go to this friend's house. I want to go to this friend's house.
Yeah.
And we just knew that we wanted a strong, I don't even think we had the word family culture yet, but that was what we wanted. We wanted a strong family culture. We wanted our family to be the center of our lives. We were in this together. We were doing this together. We were going to spend time together. And so I knew one other family that homeschooled. And actually, first we looked at going to another school. So we looked at maybe switching to the Catholic schools, or there's other private independent schools in the area. But when we went to them, they weren't markedly different. They were just really expensive public schools. And so we had a conversation about it. And my husband said, I don't want the kids to be weird, right? All of these, like, we didn't know anyone homeschooled, and we knew one family that was homeschooling, and they were talking to us about it. I finally convinced him to try it because we
Mhm.
went to Disney World on Christmas break. And it's insane at Disney World over Christmas. Like the Magic Kingdom
Yeah.
closes to capacity
Oh my
that week
goodness.
between Christmas and New Year's. And we were there. And this is really ironic because it's the last time we ever went to Disney World. But before that, we had gone like every 18 months. And I looked at him and I said, if we homeschooled, we could come to Disney World when no one else is on vacation. And he said, okay, I think we can try it. We'll try it.
Interesting.
We tried it because we wanted that strong family culture. And my daughter is now 23. So this was a long time ago, 17 years
Mhm.
ago. Even then, we started encountering challenges
Yeah.
to our faith in the public
Yeah.
school system. On Veterans Day in first grade was the day that I decided I wanted to homeschool because the teacher gave the students a poem about Veterans Day. And in it was, we pray for the people who fight for us or something. And she had the little 6-year-olds pick up their pencil and cross out the word prayer. And so when Rita, my daughter, came home from school, I asked about it and she said, oh, but we had to cross that out because you can't pray in school. And it's like, well, like you can't force everybody to pray, but if you want to say a prayer in school, you can say a prayer in school. She's like,
Yeah.
no. Teacher said we can't talk about prayer in school. And so I called the teacher, and she was a super young teacher and was just trying to do her best. She was afraid that the atheist parents would get angry with her for using a poem that said prayer. I talked to her about it a little bit. And at that moment, I looked at Chris and I was like, I don't want to have to keep fighting this fight. I had no idea how much of a fight there would be eventually.
Yeah.
I just said, I don't want to do this. So we brought them home. We brought them home because we wanted a family culture. We brought them home because we wanted to teach them the faith. And we brought them home because we wanted to meet them where they were academically. And it has been such a gift that we've been able to do that. And I think it's better for us, right? And I know it's not what everybody chooses. And maybe it's not even what everybody should choose. I know for us, it has been such a blessing to our children's relationships with their siblings. It has been a blessing to our marriage because we're not running as much. And so we have time together as a family and as a couple because we're able to have more control over what we say yes to.
This is so interesting. I was a guest on a podcast yesterday that follows the trends in micro schools and hybrid schooling. And so it is, it's about homeschooling, but it's really also about the ways in which kind of entrepreneurial moms and dads have come together in different ways. One of the things we talked about is this centering on the home that you just mentioned. He said, well, like, isn't it counterintuitive that when you have a lot to do, like homeschooling would make things better? And I said, no, it is counterintuitive, but actually that was the number one thing I said was the scheduling. I said, when the kids are in school, like everything revolves around the school schedule. When they're at home and I work, everything revolves around my schedule. And that in itself just brings a lot of peace to the home. The critics who point out these are the types of ways we got to where we are today, who look back at like the Industrial Revolution and they say, okay, well, the really big problem is that we took production outside of the home. When we did that, we kind of like disintegrated the family community. And I think there's pieces of that story that are absolutely right. But what some people conclude today is we can't get that back unless we return production to the home. Now, that won't be possible in a modern economy. Like the engineering your husband does, like this cannot come home. But I keep thinking, is education maybe that type of a thing? It's a kind of production. I don't like to use that word, but there's a profound integration of family life that comes returning education to the home. And of course, there's a lot of myths about it. It's not as if everybody is doing everything at home for their kids. Like there's a lot of contracting in a sense, but it's a fascinating topic, the extent to which sort of recentering the educational experience for our children in the home puts some of that Humpty Dumpty back together again.
And I think if you look at historically, it was much later that children who were going to school, right, who were going to be educated by somebody else completely outside of the home, they weren't going when they were 4 or 3, right? Like full day drop off preschool now at 3 years old. And that's school. That's not daycare. That's considered school. And it was much later. I think that's a way we can really bring back the effect of a shared project of life, right?
Yeah.
There, Mary Harrington wrote this book recently, Feminism Against Progress, right? In there, she talks about how it used to be that the
Yeah.
work of life was a shared burden. And when you end up that you're going right in two separate places
Yeah.
to two separate lives, and then you just kind of come together and have dinner at night, that idea
Yeah.
of that shared work of life. And I think that homeschooling really does that. And it does it in a way that, again, right, my husband sees how hard I work in educating our children. The week the world shut down in 2020 and my husband worked from home that week, I was trying to teach a first grader how to read at the dining room table. And my phone bings. I look and it says, I had no idea. I love you so much. Thank you. And
Wow.
this was our 8th kid that I've been teaching to read. And
Yeah.
because he wasn't home, he hadn't seen that. And it made him really want to see and be involved in more. And we really are, like, our children and our home are our shared life. They are our work. He likes his work. He's good at his work, but he's very clear that he does his work so that we can do this, so that we can do our life.
Right.
Not he works to live, not lives to work.
I'm so glad you mentioned Mary Harrington. She was in the back of my mind when I was mentioning this disintegration, and I wouldn't take it for granted. But Mary, if you're listening, your work is reaching people. Obviously, if we're going to talk about women's work and what women's work is and the nature of it, I mean, factories and kind of production outside the home did one kind of thing, but schools are set up in a sense because of the factories, but they schools in some sense replace a certain essence of what women do at home. And so I often think about schools as the central kind of challenge to what women think of themselves as able to do. And then we have this funny situation now where we've never been more proud of having more well-educated young women. We're really committed to that. We're doing this. Good people everywhere starting colleges and universities, and it's all good. There's like so much good happening. And then we turn around and look at the same young women and say, you're not qualified to educate your own child. You're a super well-educated human being. And we've taken pride in your education. But I'm super optimistic that the recentering of education around the home can heal some wounds, I guess is the way I'd put it. It'll never be for everybody, but it can heal some of this.
But I would go even maybe a step further. And this is, if I were ever to do research on anything, this is the question I mull over in my mind quite a bit. It is, education is one aspect, but there are many aspects of caregiving, therapy, basic medical care, elder care, that were at one point the work of women in the home. And we have taken that work out of the home. It's still primarily women, but they're not doing it for their own families out of love. They're doing it for clients, for money. It's a real question that I think we should ponder when we look at the state of mental health, physical health, the United States in so many ways. What happens when you take work of love and you commodify it? And then you take people who want to provide care and you tell them, well, that's great. Yes, be a nurse, be a teacher, be a therapist, be all these things, but don't be a mom because that's less than. You're only worthy if you do these things for money. And I don't think that we appreciate the damage we do to our communities and our families and ourselves when everything becomes a transaction.
Amen. So many interesting things. We could team up as researchers. Maybe we will someday. I wanted to just go ahead and ask you, now that like the creative juices are flowing, how do you do it? When people ask you that question, how do you do this? Now you've explained to us you don't just raise 13 children, but you have taken a huge role in their education as well. And so what are some of the non-memed thoughts you have about how you do this?
I do it not well all the time. I try real hard. My husband, when people ask him how we do it, he'll frequently respond, like, we just keep trying to do our best. And no matter what situation life puts in front of us, we try real hard to do the best that we can where we're at. And so when I had all little kids and I was working outside the home, our school life looked a lot like unschooling with some math
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah.
And then we did a hybrid school for 5 years, which I found to be a great blessing in a lot of ways, especially for my older kids. We discerned out of because we didn't think it was great for our younger kids to be outside the home or for me to be teaching as much as I was, despite the fact that I loved it. And so how do we do it? We do it by being in a constant state of examination, honestly. What are we doing? Is this working? Yeah, it's working. Okay, great. No, this is not working. So let's look at this, okay, on the big picture, right? That's how we do it. And so we have some children who are academically gifted and we're constantly discerning how to challenge them. And I have at least 2 so far, kids that are dyslexic and took a lot longer to learn. Okay, so how do we meet their needs and help them? I have my 5th child about to graduate, and I thought I finally had the whole college thing and looking at colleges down pat. No, he wants to row Division 1. So we're not looking at any Newman Guide schools. We're doing the whole thing all over again. And so we do it by just always praying and working hard and saying, okay, what is the right way to handle this now? I think we also do it by prioritizing first things first. And I think that for us, this was a great lesson for us in 2020 when everything extra was gone. I had an eye twitch before. I thought it was just like, I can't remember ever not having an eye twitch. And in 2020, my eye twitch went away. And I remember looking at my husband saying, my eye doesn't twitch anymore. I wonder why. And I was like, I think it might be because like I'm resting now. Like we have time to just rest.
Wow.
And then in 2022, things started picking up again and it came back a couple times. I was like, nope, we're done. Nope, we're done. This is too much.
Oh, that's so interesting. Wow.
And so like we'll be invited to do something and I'll say, no, we can't. And then, family and friends, they'll just ask, oh, do you guys have something else going on? No, we need a night at home. We need rest. And so we try really hard to prioritize making sure that we get exercise and that we eat well and that we pray together as a family and individually. We take time to just read a good book because if we don't do those first, I tell the kids, I'm like, you need to eat right, sleep right, exercise and pray. And if you don't do those first things, you can't do anything else. It doesn't matter how hard you try. You're not going to do very well at them. And so we fill those things first and then the other stuff comes after it. And I think that we're able to do better at the secondary because we have the primary. That being said, I by no means say that we have the primary under control. So we're just constantly trying, right? We're trying and we understand those to be the first things. But by no means am I claiming that we've got it down pat.
Yeah.
I mean, if I have any regret about early motherhood is that I didn't understand that. And I let go of what I would now call first things, maybe not prayer. I knew that we were trying to raise our kids in the faith. And so we always were really good about making sure we prayed. But I ate junk and did not do anything physically active and did not sleep for a decade. And if I could go back, I would cut a lot of things that I was doing at that time to make sure that I was doing those things well. And I think it would have made me a better mom and just a better person.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I mean, my first decade was like that too. And then I kind of sat down and realized, actually in the midst of the first really terrible postpartum depression that I had, like this isn't sustainable. Not sure that what I did or have been doing has contributed to this, but something has to change. So my husband says now, I mean, we're both a lot more active than we probably used to be, but he'll say, prayer and exercise are like the 2 lungs. And if you don't do those two things. And, not because we want to look good or be fit, but actually because we have bodies. Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. We've neglected the body for a long time. That's really beautiful. Would you be open to sharing some of the ways that you manage postpartum depression?
For me, it ended up being low progesterone. We were able to identify that. So I had postpartum depression after my sixth baby that was severe. It was really bad. And then I got pregnant again really quick. So I was actually tandem nursing and pregnant and had postpartum depression. And that was my first miscarriage.
Yeah.
And I ended up miscarrying again. And then I had a successful pregnancy, and getting pregnant again and getting the influx of hormones really kind of reset me back to a better place. Not that I'm saying that's how you treat postpartum depression, but that's how I did
understand.
there, right?
Yeah.
And then after that baby, I started miscarrying again, and I went to go see a NAPRO doctor because my midwife at the time, who's amazing, said, you don't just go from having 6 babies and everything being fine to miscarrying 3 out of 4 pregnancies without something being up. And she said, I want you to go see somebody. And she had actually recommended that I go see a doctor that specialized in IVF. And I said, I don't want to go to them because they made you great. They may know a lot of things, but I don't want to have to sift through what they're telling me to do about whether or not morally I can or I can't. And so I actually found the Gianna Center in Manhattan and started taking the train down to New York City. I was diagnosed with low progesterone, and I've been taking progesterone supplements while pregnant and between pregnancies since. So that has been very, 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 very helpful. There's a history of mental illness in my family pretty severely. And so I think I have, for whatever reason, a tendency towards depression and anxiety anyways. And the progesterone was the first thing that was able to kind of get me out of the place that I could start to think about things more logically, if that makes sense. And so now I need to be really careful about eating sugar. I know that when I have sugar, I actually have a little card that I read almost every morning to remind myself, when you eat a lot of sugar, you cry afterwards. And I love chocolate chip cookies, so it's really hard. But I've identified that, having a lot of sugar is not good for me. If I skip my exercise, I'm a runner now, which is, that's something that I've been able to add that's great as far as I'm the girl that likes the star on the chart, right? I run and I get a medal, and Nike Run Club says I did a good job. And so I get that little dopamine hit from the
dopamine hit.
I have medals. I have running medals.
Amazing.
Not because I won anything, but just because everybody gets a medal when you finish. So now I would say that I have to be very careful about my diet, and I have to be very careful about my sleep, which you only have so much control over when you have a new baby every year and a half, right? You can only do so much. That being said, I could have napped more. Like I could have said, you know what? It's okay. The kids can watch an extra Wildcrats because I really need a nap. And I didn't until I could see it, right? Once I got the progesterone, I could actually start to mince what was working and what wasn't. So I wish I had done that sooner. I wish I had figured that out sooner, that by eating better and prioritizing my sleep and by making sure I had time to exercise, I can be relatively sane now. So that's good.
It's amazing. I'm thankful for your sharing these difficulties and how you solve them, because, a lot of people kind of assume that if you are in a position to choose family, like everything's going well, like everything must be going well. And yet I've talked to hundreds of people who fight to build their families around mental health challenges that are severe. And it's so admirable and so beautiful. And I do think this progesterone story and the NAPRO technology needs to be more well known. For me, that was what was needed. But the problem was I didn't know that I needed it when I was suffering from that. As you say, like, you're not rational, you're not logical. And so if I did it again, if I was able to have a child again, I would need somebody to put a sticky note on my forehead, like, she's going to say she doesn't need this.
Yeah.
give her the natural progesterone after that baby is born, like immediately. Don't wait. So yeah, I really wish I had learned about that earlier.
I
Thank you.
think that as we're talking about these things, we talk to our daughters about this. I am so
Yes.
hopeful
Yeah.
that my daughters will not have to fight as hard
Right.
because they
Right.
will see. The world I came from was the world where everybody has 2 kids. They're 2.5 years apart. And then you don't have any more kids and you don't talk about how you don't have any more kids. You just don't.
Yeah.
And so none of this was part of my
Yeah.
conversation. And so I'm
Yeah.
really hopeful that from them seeing it and hearing it and
Mhm.
talking about it, they won't wait and they won't put off those things that can help them. And they won't wait
Yeah.
to ask for help because they'll know.
100%. I want to come back to your story about learning about what you called the theology of the body. You said that you discovered that Christopher West had like a simpler version. Would you be able to explain for listeners kind of like what that was, like how you kind of got into that, what you read, or what you found compelling about that story? So obviously, you know, rejecting contraception is not actually the main story of people who choose to have children. Women all over the country contracept and have kids 16 months apart. That's how they time it. That's a phenomenon and a thing. But then there's also a group of women like yourself. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The book, you can find it and put it in the show notes maybe,
Sure.
but it was like
Yeah.
Theology of the Body for Beginners or something like
Okay.
that. Like it wasn't called Theology of the Body for Dummies, but that's what it was. It just explained very plainly how we were created to come together as men and women. Physically, we all know that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what it articulated that I had never heard before was how that natural truth of our physicality ripples out into our relationships in our world.
Yeah.
And if we are contracepting, we're choosing to break something about that. And so when we got married, we went to a pre-Cana talk and they gave like a natural family planning talk. And they spent a lot of time talking about chemical birth control, like why not to be on the pill. And
Yeah.
so we left that thinking, oh, yeah, we definitely can't use the pill. So, okay, now we know that. But until I became more familiar with this idea that JP2 propagates in theology of the body, that we're really meant to come together. We're meant to give ourselves to each other fully, not holding anything back. And when we hold something back, like our fertility, we're putting a distance in our relationship. Even if we're not intending to put a distance in our relationship,
Yeah.
emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, by putting that physical distance in our relationship, we are. Understanding that, we said, well, wait, if we were made this way, we should not change that. We should work with it. We shouldn't work against it. So I was working in the hotel, and my boss at the time was a Baptist pastor who was also working in a hotel. And he and his wife had a large family as well. And they were considering whether or not she was going to have her tubes tied. And he came up to me and he knew that I didn't agree with contraception. And he said, what do you think? Well, it was great. We had these discussions. Like we had so many great discussions. And I said, you know, I just think that when God made your wife, he looked at her and he said, she is good. He didn't say she is good until she's got 5 kids and then she's not good anymore. So you better go ahead and fix my work because I didn't do it right. You need to fix it now. And I think that's where our kind of understanding came in, was that we now understood what we were meant for. And we were meant for fully coming together. We were meant for being in union. And contraception took a part of that out. And so we were going to have to learn how to come together fully. I mean, for us, we ended up going just default in. But I have lots of friends who don't use contraception, who aren't default in. They use natural family planning to intentionally space their kids. They're still fully united in doing it in a way that contraception doesn't allow you to. It just takes it off the table.
It's really interesting. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, what's the difference? Like, I take ibuprofen to fix a headache. And that's how God made me. I have headaches, but we fix that. It's a blessing to be able to fix things that aren't like the way we would want them to be. And why not this? Like, why not take a little pill to make this a little easier, Makes us have to define what health is, right?
I think it does. I think it makes us have to define what health is. I think that my fundamental disagreement with equating contraception with Advil is that you're then equating children with a headache. And I don't think they are, right? So our bodies are not designed to have headaches. That's a fault in the system.
I hope not. Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a consequence of original sin. We live in a fallen world. But our bodies are not designed to be broken.
Yeah.
Our bodies are designed to be fruitful and multiply. Our bodies are designed to come together in the marital act and to have children. And so preventing that is not bringing our bodies to function better, as Advil will if it takes away your headache, right? It's stunting a function of our body. And so they're fundamentally different things. I am a woman. I am meant and made physically to bear and nurture children. That is what I am physically meant to do. And so if I do something to my body, either permanently or temporarily, to change that, I'm not fixing myself. I'm altering myself. I'm taking a function and I am breaking it. And I don't think breaking things ever fixes other things, right? So like, that doesn't mean that it's easy to have kids, so everybody should have 13 of them. It's not easy. Nothing about this is easy. It doesn't mean that there isn't real pain and suffering in it. But breaking something because something feels broken is not going to cause it to be fixed. It's just going to spread the brokenness further. And so we need to look at what it is that's actually causing the suffering and then work with that.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking about the discussion. I wish it was a more vigorous one. The discussion we're having about physician-assisted suicide. It's a piece of that, right? There's a piece of kind of incorrect response to suffering. What you're saying really reminds me of this. It's like intentionally breaking something when there's a compassion and a co-suffering that we are called to do.
I mean, I think so many of our current issues, just societally, come from that desire to just avoid suffering, right? I can't do, XYZ. I don't want to pick something because I don't want to accidentally offend somebody who is suffering with it, right? But I can't handle this suffering. And so since I can't handle this suffering, I'm going to get out of this suffering. And the options seem to be either, well, just offer it up and in a really, nonchalant way, you just suffer or you don't suffer. But in actuality, we're all better when we take that suffering and we do it together. And we recognize the very, very difficult opportunities that come from that suffering to make us better individually and to make us better as a whole. We've had discussions before about female hormones in this house. There's a lot of them, right? And as I've shared, right, postpartum and just in general, I tend towards having a really hard time hormonally. I remember saying to a good friend of mine, when I get to heaven, that's my question. Like, if you get a question, I'm going to ask God, female hormones, WTF, because I don't get it. I just don't get it. And this friend is a guy, and he is actually one of my son's godfathers. And he got this really serious look on his face, and he goes, because we need each other. And if you women didn't kind of get knocked on your butt occasionally, you wouldn't need us. And so it's just one of the ways that we suffer so that we need each other. Because if we forget that we need each other, we think we're God and we think we can do everything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, doesn't make it easier, doesn't make it more pleasant, but I think there's a lot of truth there.
Yeah, there's like a central claim, which I think is really close to the heart of what John Paul II was writing about, which is that loneliness and isolation is actually the worst kind of suffering. Like that's it. And that's hard to imagine when we're suffering other things that are super, super, super bad. But I think, you know, he calls it that kind of existential loneliness, like that discovery, that possibility, right? It's a possibility when we realize we're not God, like the possibility that we can be radically alone, like radically alone. And of course, hopefully our own decisions don't lead us to be radically alone and separated from other people, but they can. They can. And of course, many, 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 many people suffer from being radically alone through no fault of their own. And this is one of the most important things we could do is reach out to those people. But that insight, I think, is tremendous. That insight that the worst thing at the bottom of all the other worst things is, right? Because suffering we're not going to avoid, but to have to suffer and be totally alone in our suffering.
Yeah.
So it's really deep and profound. Surfacing back up from this subject, has your parish, your faith community been a support and a resource for your family since that time when you got more connected to your faith?
I mean, we're very blessed. We have a great parish. We love our parish. There are not a lot of large families in our parish. And there's not a ton of involvement with families in our parish. There are some great people there, though, and we've been blessed with very good priests and our fellow parishioners. I take the kids to daily mass frequently, and we bring down the average age significantly, but everyone is lovely and very sweet and supportive. And my kids help pay their crew team fees by doing yard work for half of the parish.
That's great.
Yeah, our parish has been a great blessing for sure. I think the larger support came when we started homeschooling and we became a part of a Catholic homeschool community. We're in the Diocese of Albany. So geographically, it's a really big diocese. And so we're quite spread out. There's probably not more than a couple homeschool families or large families at any individual parish, but we're able to come together frequently as families. And I think that is really, that's where I really got the how to do this life, which is weird because I was the young mom that didn't know and, was really on the journey and pestering all of the older moms who had been doing it and were, 10, 15 years ahead of me at the time. And now I'm that mom in the house.
Yeah.
And it feels very strange. I'm like, wait, why are you asking me this question? Oh, that's why. Okay, because you're 30 and you're not there yet. But that's been our greatest support, has been that homeschool group for sure.
That's amazing. One of the things that I felt that I discovered, or maybe heard, I'll say heard, when I interviewed moms at the beginning of this project, was this idea that when we think about children, I think when people think about what it is to have a child or to bring a child into the world, when they think about kids out there, the overwhelming thought is about a responsibility, about a task. And I'm trying to make it neutral. I say responsibility or task. Some people might say a burden, a thing that we have to do. But one of the discoveries which was so compelling to me and continues to bear a lot of fruit in my own life and in my research is the idea that we're busy thinking about children as something that we are doing. We're doing it for them, but that they are actually doing something very important for us. They have all of this perhaps surprising value for us. They save us in interesting ways. And we're so wrapped up in all the ways in which they demand things from us that I think it's been a blind spot, a big oversight to miss the ways in which actually they are rescuing us. And in a sense, from that kind of loneliness we just talked about, but in all kinds of other ways too. I guess my question for you is, in what ways have your children saved you?
think the biggest way is that asking myself how I was going to raise them in regards to their relationship with their faith made us take a serious look at what we thought and what we believed. And our close relationship with Christ, our return to the sacraments is 100% because we had to raise kids and we didn't want to raise them in a mediocre way. And so if we were going to do something, we were going to do it well. And so that meant not just checking the boxes, but actually understanding what we were doing. And in doing that, we have grown so much spiritually. I think that's definitely the biggest way in which they've saved us. I think that the level of selflessness that is required to be an intentional parent has saved us from a life of pride and selfishness. It would have been so easy to just check out and I do my thing and he does thing and look how great we're doing, and literally not even know what we were missing, right? Like that's one of the things that I find most mind-blowing when I look back is that I am a person now that I could not have imagined existing when I was 21. I didn't even know this was a possibility. And that expansion of my understanding and my capabilities is 100% because of my kids. And not just because of the number of them. Very frequently, people hear the number and they just understand the number.
Yeah.
But each of those 13 children is an individual. And so, sure, there are times, there are days that my husband gets home from work and he'll look at me and be like, oh, and I'll be like, it felt like 30 today, honey. Like it didn't feel like 13. It felt like 30 today. Like there are days for sure that the number is a thing, especially with the age range, right? There are days that we have everything from potty training problems to potential people are getting married problems all in one day. And that's a lot. But I think what has really saved us by challenging us to grow into who we are called to be and into better people who are really clinging to Christ is the little individual things, being able to look at a child where they are at, meeting them and trying to bring them closer to where they are called to be. And they're all each so different that it demands of us really growing and really expanding in ways that if it has been the two of us or just us and our one son and daughter, and especially honestly, our oldest two are pretty normal. But academically, like in all of the ways that you think of when you're raising kids, like my oldest two kids definitely would have just fit the mold. Like I could have just kept them in and done the next one thing after another. But especially as you go down the line, there are kids that just had differences. They had things that made them different and more challenging for us. And it's been so good for us. And I frequently think to myself that we would have been denying ourselves so much had we not had them. Like we would not be who we are if we had not had them. And I'm really glad that I am who I am now.
Amazing. Anything else that you want to get on the record? Myths that you want to bust? Last words? The thing you didn't say to that person at the grocery store?
See, myths that I want to bust. I don't have it all together. I think that
important.
is an important thing. I frequently hear from people, oh, I would have had more, but I couldn't. I couldn't because of a serious reason, but I couldn't because I'm not organized or I'm not this or I'm not smart enough or I'm not, we did it because and are doing it because it's what we're called to do, and you figure it out. It doesn't always look pretty. It's very infrequently does it feel easy. I think that people see me sitting here now and I look normal, and when people come over and my house is nice and clean, or I'm talking about homeschooling, or you see something on Facebook or Instagram, I think are especially bad for this in particular, right? You give this idea,
Right.
this impression that you've got everything together, and I don't.
Yeah.
Things are
Yeah.
beautiful. Things are great, but they're
Yeah.
not always.
Yeah.
There are really bad seasons. There are really bad days. There are really hard things. We've had 10 miscarriages.
Mm.
And that has been probably the hardest thing for us. When you're open to life and you just love to have your babies, and then you don't over and over and over again, it's really hard, and it makes you question. And so there have been seasons that this house looked like it was pretty much falling apart. There were seasons that, I mean, I wasn't sure we were going to make it. My husband always knows we're going to make it. So that's not him. But I'm a child of divorce, and there's a lot of divorce in my family. And so there have been seasons where I've been like, oh, we're just not going to make it. But we did. But you do.
Yeah.
You do, because when you decide to make it, you can. And so I don't love it when I get comments in which people say, well, you can because your kids are so well behaved, or because you're insinuating that we can do what we're doing because things are easy and perfect for us, and so thus we can. And the reality is that it's not easy and it's not perfect, but we can.
There's a big piece of good news in that, right? Because I think a lot of people thinking about what they hope for the future, what kind of marriage they'd like to have, they are haunted by divorce in their family, dysfunction. But there's a kind of gospel here. It sounds like actually, if we're made for this and God's grace is here to sustain us, actually, you don't have to have a perfect background or perfect set of skills or perfect set of genes. Like, you might have all these troubles. So the child is like at the center of a kind of gospel or kind of good news, which is, I think, as we're heading into the darker days. I mean, we're both in the northern hemisphere. We're heading into the darker days. Those of us that suffer from a little bit of postpartum, also maybe the seasonal, I do, the seasonal disorder. The older I get, the more grateful and compelled I am that we have this sort of celebration of the incarnation, celebration of the child in the dark, in the middle of the dark, and how much fruit I have meditating on that.
It's worth it. I mean, I think that's the thing that I wish more people knew, was that the positive implications, the light in the darkness, is so great. And it's greater than we can possibly imagine. I appreciate it now far more than I once did, but I know that I don't appreciate its fullness yet, and I never will be able to. But I now feel like I know enough to know that I don't know, which is huge.
That is huge. Thank you so much for just opening your heart to me all these states away, and sharing so much of your story. I feel like we might be sisters from another mother. I don't want to add a bunch of my story to yours, but there's a lot of similarities there. What a gift of a first episode. But every day, Shaunda, I get emails or messages from people who, reading the book or seeing a podcast I did on this topic, has opened their hearts to have another baby. It's not why I started this project. I didn't start this project to persuade people to have children. But people are going to hear your testimony and they're going to go, oh, like, okay, we thought we were done, but maybe we could have one more. And you'll be like, well, thank you, God. Praise God.